All of my friends no longer want to speak to me. I can't buy a house because the house market has inflated because of riba and usury. The men of the West couldn't look at the fact that their daughters are being geared up to sell themselves online. Your children will never be able to have a family ever and will be in debt until they can pay it off when they're 90. A young boy when he's 9 or 10 years old can get access to internet pornography even if he's not looking for it and be enslaved until he can beat it when he's 25 or 30. OnlyFans is now the 4th biggest career choice for women in the West. Same women who would have gone on to be community leaders, they would have gone on to be mothers and wives and great people, are now deciding that they want to sell their body online for fiat currency. The entire financial system and the whole world now is based on riba and debt.
So this guy is a genius, and not because he says things that they agree with or any reason that has to do with Islam, none of that. It actually has to do with his character. This will surprise you a little bit. First of all, this video is from a channel called Muslim Convert Stories. They have a lot of great content, but this one caught my eye, and I'll tell you why. Every young man dealt with this problem to some degree. It's inevitable, which is the feeling that you don't really perfectly fit in your society. You want to have your friend group, you want to have your little community, so you fight to fit in, you fight to be liked by people. Your biggest objective is to be accepted either by society or like your family, people at school, your neighborhood. Some people never grow out of that. Till they die, they still think that everybody should like them, and this mindset enslaves them. So what do? They do what society tells them to do. They want to feel part of the group. And I'm not saying that's wrong, it's just a powerful force that very few people can resist. That's why at the first sign of them being ostracized, of being cast out, being forced into social isolation, they panic and they start doing everything to make people like them again, accept them again. They forfeit their beliefs, they shut up about their real convictions, they do whatever it takes to stay within the tribe. And those who don't, sometimes they fall into dark places, they turn into criminals, and that also is not the right response. The right response is to carve your own way and be willing to pay the price, because there will be a premium to pay. That's why the rebels in every society, the mavericks, are always a tiny minority, a small fraction, a thin sliver. You don't need to be a revolutionary, you don't need to be Che Guevara and pick up a weapon. It could be something as simple as embracing an idea that everybody around you deems unacceptable, a threat to Western civilization, which you are a part of, obviously. So when everybody was going in one direction, he went the opposite direction. He said, no, I'm not signing off on this. Yes, after that, he found his community, which is very important for new Muslims, but at the very beginning, taking this one step is very hard to do for normal people.
Because all they want to do is go to a nightclub and drink and try and hedonistically fornicate with women, enslaved by this attention hookup culture, and I'm not signing off on that.
You know what, in all honesty, I don't know what I personally would have done if I was in his position. I was blessed by growing up in a Muslim community surrounded by good people, so I wasn't tested that way, but I know that it's a very hard test to pass. You know how I know this? Because most people don't.
And I started to realize that was a lie, and once I discovered that there was a God, I started to look around me and question, who are the people that are opposing this? And since a young age, I've been hit very hard with the anti-Islam propaganda, and I started to connect the dots. The only countries in the world I could find where pornography was illegal was in Muslim countries. The only countries I could find in the world where riba and fiat currency were illegal were in Muslim countries. The only place I could find in the world where you weren't pushed this atheism, nihilistic, you're worthless idea that we come from nothing was Muslim countries.
This one caught my eye, and I'll tell you why. All Muslims ask themselves, or at least asked themselves at some point, why does the West hate Muslims? Why are they fighting Islam tooth and nail? What they say is that it's because Islam is a terrorist religion, these people are primitive monkeys, whatever garbage they are spewing. We know that's not true, and they know it too. So what's the real reason? Why are the powers that be hell-bent on destroying Muslim countries? Surprise, surprise, it's the same exact reason that the early kuffar, the early disbelievers who fought Prophet Muhammad, had in mind when they were fighting the Prophet. It's always been the same.
This is why the West doesn't want you to embrace Islam. Let me explain why. If the entire world were to embrace Islam, the trillion-dollar alcohol industry would vanish. $500 billion from gambling would disappear. The $50 million profit from pornography would be erased. The usurious loans that global banks depend on would cease to exist. It would be an economic catastrophe for the corrupt system they've built. This is why they don't want you to be a Muslim. Because Islam encourages a disciplined way of life. And as a disciplined Muslim, it becomes difficult to control you. That's why Western media works tirelessly to manipulate and program your minds. and those of your children. Haven't you noticed? This generation has lost its sense of shame. They've become people driven solely by their desires and impulses. The only strong and unwavering defense against this corrupt ideology is Islam.
The only correction that I have to this video that I found on Instagram is that he said 50 million, talking about the porn industry. He probably meant billion. The porn industry generates more income than the combined revenues of ABC, NBC, and CBC, and more than the combined revenues of the NFL, NBA, and the MLB. That's in the USA alone, between 15 and 97 billion a year.
And I started to realize that the enemy of my enemy was in fact my friend. The same people who want to send me to war, put me in debt, and turn my wife into a prostitute, they were the same people that were telling me Islam was bad. And then I realized that the whole anti-Muslim propaganda that we've been fed in the West was a trick, and it was to get us to go to war and pick up a gun and shoot our fellow brothers under Allah for banks, because Muslims would not take sodomy, they would not take pornography, they would not take usury and riba. And I realized that's all the Afghanistan war was, that's all the Iraq war was, this is all the American wars against Muslim countries was just because Muslims would not accept haram. I feel like I have a fire inside of me, and I can't, maybe it's a heavy conscience, but I can't accept the fact that when I have sons, they will try to enslave him with his passions, and they will try to sell my daughters, and the only people that would really give me an explanation and a solution were the Muslims that were around me. You'll know them by their fruits, and I started to look at what countries do not allow this. Muslim countries, backed by Sharia law. And I didn't give up on Christianity easily. I started reading all the banned books from the Bible, and then I decided the amount of translations that there's been, the amount of kings have rewritten the Bible. Kings who are not prophets rewrote the Bible to suit their agenda. Does that problem occur with the Quran? I noticed it didn't. One translation, one book given by Allah. Fast forward 2 weeks, after reading the Quran, I swiftly got my Shahada done.
Didn't you notice that it's always a very short period of time between someone reading the Quran and them embracing Islam right away? They read a translation of the Quran, they understand part of it obviously, I'm sure they don't understand all of it from the first read, but the power of the word of God is so apparent, it's so obvious to anyone who hasn't been corrupted to the core, that they change their entire life and become a completely different person. That's why the anti-Islam propaganda is so vicious, because they know that the message is too powerful to ignore. It will take over the world, as it did at some point, and they can't allow that again. When Prophet Muhammad started calling people to embrace Islam, his tribe, Quraysh, fought him the same way the powers of evil, the powers of Satan are fighting Muslims today, because their entire lives revolved around drinking, fornication, worshipping idols, slaves. So the powers that were governing the Arabian Peninsula back then, they didn't want to lose that, the same way the powers of Satan don't want to lose their leverage over the rest of us nowadays. And once you embrace Islam, you are suddenly free. You believe what Prophet Muhammad said. If the entire nation were to gather together to benefit you with anything, they would not benefit you except with what Allah had already prescribed to you. And if they were to gather together to harm you with anything, they would not harm you except with what Allah has already prescribed against you. You can't manipulate, threaten, buy, control anybody who believes that everything that happens in the entire existence happens only with the permission of Allah and will be accounted for in the Day of Judgment. You can't be enslaved when you believe that. And that's what they fear. That's what they're terrified of. Thank you for watching. Our previous video hit 100,000 views, which was amazingly surprising. So let's keep this momentum going. Please leave a like and a comment and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much.